Hi, everyone. This is Kacie Main, author of the book I Gave Up Men for Lent, the story of a jaded, hopelessly romantic, health-conscious party girl's search for meaning. And you are listening to Chasing Dreams with Amy J.
It's always fun when you get people. Now you're a podcaster. I say it. Podcasters, we're just good. We're just good.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Hey, you're there. Hey, Dream Chasers. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 205 of Chasing Dreams. Can you believe it? It's September 2019, and we're into our 5th episode after 200. Mind-boggling, guys. It's crazy. We wouldn't be there if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much for your support, whether you're listening on iTunes, podcast, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever it is. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And if you didn't know, we are also on YouTube. So you can watch the video of me and Kacie chatting over on our YouTube playlist where you can find us. It's amyj21.com/YouTube. So fun guest, Kacie Main. She released her debut book, I Gave Up Men for Lent, the story of the jaded, hopeless, romantic, health-conscious party girl's search for meaning in this past February, 2019. She was born and raised in Florida. She enjoyed a successful career in the corporate world before leaving it all behind to pursue her dream of becoming a full-time writer, which I have got to talk to her about. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and communications and a master's degree in business administration, and she's here today. And I'm so excited because, Kacie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. And I'm so excited to talk to you because, I'm going to be honest, it was the book title that caught my eye.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how can I not?
It's funny. The book title either catches people or turns them away because they then kind of have all these assumptions about the book. So I've realized it's very hit or miss.
That may be true. It was a hit in this point. So
Perfect.
There is that. So let's get to know you a little bit. We're going to play some question and answer with a set of random questions from this little box. All right. You ready?
Yep.
What is an example of a household disaster that has happened to you?
Oh, a couple weekends ago, the refrigerator broke and I just moved into my boyfriend's place and he was at work when it happened. And so it became this whole big stressful thing of me trying to handle it when he wasn't there. And then we went and bought a new one and we bought it off the floor and had to try and carry it up the stairs. And it was just...
Oh my gosh.
But we survived. And so our first kind of drama, I guess, of living together. It happened very quickly.
Nothing says welcome to your new home than a broken refrigerator.
Oh yeah. Lots of fun.
Ugh. This is controversial. Which city has the best barbecue?
I don't know how great my answer is because I don't know that I've been to a lot of really great barbecue cities, but my sister used to live in Charlotte and I had some really good barbecue there. So I'm going to have to say Charlotte, North Carolina.
That's fair. Okay. That's fair. Okay. I have to admit and confess that really the only way I taste other barbecue places and sauces for what they're known for is Mission Barbecue and their sauces. I'm a fan of the Baltimore one, the crab, kind of like, I know.
I'm a fan of any kind of mustard-based barbecue.
There was one like that. Yeah. I was not. But, to each their own. Everybody has their own preference. Yeah. But it is controversial. I know some people take that really seriously.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Would you rather age forward or backwards from this point in time?
Forward for sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You don't want to revert?
No.
You were very quick and solid in that answer.
Yeah.
That's the part that intrigued me.
Yeah. No, I'm ready to see what comes next. I have spent enough time reflecting on the past that I don't feel the need to go back and do any of it over again. So I'm ready for the unknown.
Respect. All right. Next question. What was your best vacation ever? Hands down.
Ooh, my best vacation ever. That's a tough one. I would say my family, when I was younger, we went on like a fishing vacation in the Bahamas, but it wasn't like the touristy part of the Bahamas. We were in the Abacos, which is like the out islands. And so we rented this house and rented a boat, and everything was very quaint. There was like, no technology. And so, there's no cars, like you ride around a golf cart or like take the boat to lunch. So it was just a very, I guess like a rustic island vacation.
All right. All right. Did I say last question? I feel like if I said it, I want to do this.
Oh boy.
Well, it's ironic. And so I'm just going to say what the question is, but we're going to do a different question. What's in your refrigerator now?
Oh.
Which is it's just ironic. It really is, given the fact that the first question took the fact that your refrigerator died.
I know.
If you could have a lifetime subscription to any publication, which would you choose?
Ooh. I think I'd have to say Time magazine.
Any particular reason?
Well, this is kind of random, but I've noticed in like the grocery store that they've started doing these like special editions where they'll talk about like happiness and mindfulness, and I'm like super into all that stuff. So
I have noticed that too.
Yeah, they do these like deep dives into those areas, and so I like that. I can't help but buy one every time I see it.
Mine would probably be Entertainment Weekly.
Oh.
I love when they do special issues, and I love the reporting they do. I used to collect them, like the special ones I liked, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Wonder Woman, those kinds. So I would have to do that.
That's a good one. That's a solid answer.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being such a good sport. We got to know you a little bit better. And now let's talk a little bit about your book. And actually, I want to take it a step back. I want to kind of get back to young Kacie. And what did young Kacie want to be? Did young Kacie want to be a writer?
So no. What's funny is I wasn't really aware of my desire to be a writer until a couple of years ago, actually, like when I wrote the book. But writing was always something that I did. Like I wrote poems, and I would write like letters to people. Like writing was always kind of my more comfortable way to communicate, especially kind of like feelings and stuff. But I just think I don't know, I didn't have like the awareness as a kid of like, oh, that's a job. Like I think I lived very much in this kind of box of like, oh, you are either like a doctor or a nurse, or kind of like all the like, I don't know, like mainstream kind of jobs you hear about as a kid.
Yeah.
And so when I was little, I remember thinking I wanted to be a doctor, and then I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do with that, with like the blood and guts thing. And then when I went to college, I wanted to be a child psychologist. And so I did get an undergrad degree in psychology, but then didn't end up pursuing that further, which is now just funny because now I've kind of come back into this space of my life where
we'll talk about that.
Like all things psychology.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. So how did you go from psychology to business?
So I picked up a second degree when I was in school, really at the advice of my father, who pointed out with just a psychology undergrad, there aren't a ton of job options. Like you typically then have to go get more schooling, like a master's or a PhD. And he just pointed out, he's like, you might want to pick up another major in case you don't want to just go to more school after you graduate. And so I thought that made sense. And I knew that I was a decent writer, and I knew that I was like a decent like kind of public speaker, to the extent that I had done public speaking at that point in time in my life. So, and the college I went to had a great communications program that you had like apply to get into. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll go with communications. And then I ended up getting an emphasis in public relations, and was really kind of intrigued by that major. And then my dad was kind of right. By the time I graduated college, I didn't want to just immediately go to more school. So I got my first job in public relations, and then from there, your career just kind of takes on this path of its own, and without you really ever having those check-in points of like, what do I want to do? You always kind of seem to take the next step.
Right.
And that's what happened to me. And so I did end up going back to school, but for a master's in business administration instead of a PhD in psychology, which is what I had always wanted, which is just kind of shows how like, I guess, off track I had gotten.
Yeah, it's interesting you say and kind of describe it as off track, because I think you're absolutely right that once we get into a job, right? Our career path kind of tends to follow that job. I, for example, worked at NASA Goddard as a intern, as a co-op, as an employee. And I think I could have been there today if I had not chosen to get off of that track, off of that path, because I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled with what I was doing there. Great place, amazing coworkers. It's nothing like that. It just wasn't the fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think, when people are in a job, the natural tendency is after a year, you get a promotion, or a raise or something, or 2 years, and you kind of just keep going where that track leads you. You may look within and move, but it doesn't always happen, right?
Exactly. And then it's like, so then that kind of builds out your resume more for that same career field, like almost like a deep track, and making it harder and harder to ever switch. So I think that happens to a lot of people, and it had certainly happened to me.
And you said something interesting is that you didn't really have checkpoints where you could kind of check in and say, hey, is this really what I want? And it's intriguing that people in corporate jobs or people in jobs in general often don't have time or don't realize that you can check in with yourself and pivot if you need to, right? Because you're so caught up in the work you're doing. Did you find yourself outside of checkpoints? Did you find yourself ever? I feel like it implodes at some point. At some point, you're just so frustrated with what's going on, you implode. And so did you find yourself at that point?
Oh yeah. So
Okay.
that's pretty much what spurred the book. Is I don't know that it was so much like an implosion. It was more like a disconnect. Like I just realized I felt very disconnected from my life, kind of on all levels. Like I never got real excited. I didn't feel real inspired. I was kind of just like going along, and I felt a lot of like guilt about that, because by all societal standards, I had a great life. Like I had a good job, close family, good friends, cute apartment. I was single at the time, which, I could say that was a reason to be unhappy, but ultimately, like I had a good life on paper. I had like checked all the boxes and kind of done everything that we were supposed to do. But I don't know, like the way I describe it in the book is I just felt like blah. Like I just wasn't like excited about life. And then I had just kind of a drunken make-out mistake with a guy friend of mine, and that was right before Lent was coming up. And I wasn't very religious, so to speak, but I was raised Catholic, and I always loved the concept of giving up something for Lent. So that's why I decided to give up men. And then I added in that social media, sweets, and hard liquor, just because, I don't know, I guess I was embarrassed to only give up men for Lent. And what it ended up happening was like that just ended up being a huge check-in point for me, because like all those things were just distractions. So I had never really done any, I guess, check-ins or really any kind of level of self-reflection to be like, hold on, am I happy with my life and the direction it's going and kind of how I feel? I had never really done that, because I kind of just kept going. So yeah, that it wasn't so much an implosion, it was more a realization of disconnect, and then a big check-in.
Well, I think your observation of guilt is so accurate. I mean, even people listening to this episode, guys, if you're listening and you're feeling guilty because, and this is the key, you have a job, you're in a stable place in your life, and you're not happy. How dare you, right? It's almost how you feel. Like, who am I to complain when there are people who are unemployed looking for stuff? And here I am making X number of dollars with a roof over my head, health insurance, benefits, all this stuff, and I'm not happy. Like, there must be something wrong with me. And I know that's a normal thing, guys. I guess the point is you don't have to feel guilty about it.
It's true. I think that's a big part of it. I think if we don't have anything kind of obviously and like majorly wrong with our life, then if we're feeling any level of off or just like not totally fulfilled, we think there's something wrong with us. Like we feel like we don't have the right to feel that way. And we do that a lot because of comparison, because we compare like, well, I'm not this, or I'm not in this situation, or I don't have this going on. And like that's logical, but when you really think about it, it doesn't really make sense because you only know like your perception of things and your feelings. Like your feelings are valid. So like we should pay attention to them versus just like push them aside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that because comparison is like the death of a lot of things. It really does hurt more than it helps, guys. And so, one, stop comparing. And two, stop feeling guilty. And so when you went through this and you were going through that with what you had at that moment, not implosion, but kind of there, it sounds like writing was an outlet for you.
Yes.
What makes it such a thing where you go from writing poems, stories, to writing a full-out book about this? What inspires that?
So I had always wanted to write a book. I don't know, but I had like lost touch with that goal. Like
Mm-hmm.
thing I was aware of when I was younger, like, oh, I want to write a book one day. It's like I just, while I'm on my track of my career, I just like forgot. And so during the whole Lent big self-reflection check-in, a couple things happened that just really got me thinking. I started journaling, and I had never really journaled before, but it was probably a couple weeks into it. It felt really good. So I was like, okay, I'm going to journal every day of Lent. Like, I don't know what's going on, but this just feels good to start to get all these like thoughts and feelings out. And so it was a couple weeks into that I just kind of realized, I'm like, this could be the book that I've always wanted to write, because I just had this feeling like what I was experiencing and kind of the internal struggles that I was facing weren't unique to me, that other people had to be feeling the same way. So, and it's funny because I know we'll probably get into this in terms of like, how do you tackle this kind of stuff? But I really only ever took it like one step at a time. I didn't really think much further than that, because then I think I probably would have freaked out. So while I was writing it, it was really just that, like, okay, I'm going to write this first draft. And I didn't really think about what I was going to do with it while I was writing it. So it was like very much.
So you didn't even think about publishing when you wrote it? It was
Right.
more
I mean, I thought like, okay, maybe I will, but I didn't spend a lot of time in that thought process of trying to be like, okay, I don't know how to do this. Like, what are all the different routes? Like, I was like, that doesn't matter right now. All I'm doing right now is writing it. And so I just kind of lived in that mental space.
Do you think that's why you were able to write it? I don't want to just say it was quickly, but be able to get it out is because you didn't put that pressure upon yourself?
Yes, for sure. And I did to some degree. So once I had decided, because we always put pressure on ourselves, like, okay, I'm going to write it. After Lent, so I journaled every day through Lent. And then when that was done, I had, to go back through it, and I had to fill in backstories and flesh stuff out. And so I had set this like completely unrealistic goal for myself to be done with the first draft in like a month or something. And I blocked out on my calendar, like, because I was working still full time. So I blocked out on my calendar, like every evening, from 6 to 8, I'm going to write. And that did nothing but just stress me out more. And then it's like, I couldn't write. And then I was exhausting myself. And it was a couple close friends that were like, you should probably like take the pressure off of yourself a little bit. And so then I started to just dedicate my weekends to writing. And so it was a sacrifice in the sense of, I wasn't doing a whole lot of social stuff, but I had this great routine where I would go to bed early on Friday night because I was tired from the week. I'd get up Saturday, I'd go watch the sunrise. I'd go straight from that to like a local coffee shop and like set up at a table and just write like all day long. And then sometimes I do the same thing on Sunday. So and that was a lot, but it was very like invigorating at the same time. And because I kind of gave it its own days and like its own time instead of trying to squeeze it in, on the same days as my corporate life, it was much more manageable.
Yeah, I love the idea that you've kind of set aside time for this venture that you were doing, right? And you didn't have the pressure of, you got to publish, you got to get it out, come on, but that you kind of respected it enough to take a step back and say, hey, I'm going to give you this time and we're going to work on this. I still don't know what it's going to do, but I'm going to try. Yep. And I think oftentimes when we face that challenge and pressure that you were talking about earlier, especially working nights and it becomes a chore, people stop.
Yes.
People stop.
Yes. I think people stop because because we apply too much pressure. And I think that pressure is really coming from our tendency to set all these like goals and deadlines for ourselves and to plan out into the future. And yes, to some degree you have to do that, but I really strongly believe that when kind of a really like a big challenge or a big dream, really just doing one step at a time is the most sane way to do it, I guess, because there aren't any real deadlines. There's only the deadlines you set. So if you kind of give yourself a little bit more space, if you need to just step away from it, say for a month, then maybe that's the right thing to do rather than like push through it. And I know that that's maybe contradictory to a lot of other thought processes in terms of how to tackle a challenge, but it worked. So that's really what I know.
Well, see, I like that though. And the reason is you're right. There is no real deadline except the ones that we accept. Because I think some people think the deadline's set by society, right? That you're married by 28, that you have kids by 32, that you're in a happy home by 40. You know, if you're not on that timetable, then you're late.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think you're not.
Oh, I completely agree with you. As I sit here, 35, no kids, not married. So like having just gotten to a serious enough relationship that we've moved in together. So yeah, I guess I don't do well with with deadlines and timetables in general.
Yeah. Sitting here at 38, fine. Oh, am I 38? Yeah, I'm 38. I had to think about that.
I forget too sometimes. I'm like, oh.
I'm about to be 39. But either way, I'm fine. I'm living life and I'm happy. And that's the other thing I think people have a hard time believing, that if you don't fit the timetable, you can't be happy. This is the only way happiness comes. And I think what we want to share with you guys is it's not.
Right. I think that there's so much in society and in culture that tries to fit life into this mold of this is the way you do it. Like, and maybe it varies depending on kind of the world that you grow up in. But like for me, it was very much like you go to college and then you get a job and then you get married and then you have kids and then, you stay in your job and you promote up and then eventually you retire and yada, yada, yada. And yes, that works for some people. I also know people that have like forced themselves into that mold and it didn't work. And then there was some kind of an implosion. I was like trying to fit that mold, but just, I don't know, I guess kind of like failing miserably at it and then finding out this is not what I want. And I don't know what my path and like my mold looks like, but I guess now I've had this realization. It's like, well, I'll just figure it out as I go. Like there's nobody to tell me and I think that's one thing where it's like we can fall into this like herd mentality of the way we're supposed to do life. But I think it's more important for everyone to kind of have those check-in moments and figure out how do they want to do life, like unique to them, and then do that, because if that's what you want to do, then it's not wrong.
Yes. I think Freya in Avengers, right? Freya, Thor's mom, says it best. It's not about who you're supposed to be. It's better to be who you are.
Yes. That's goosebumps. Yeah.
Right. That's what we need. And I love that you kind of talk about that. You write about that and that you're living that, and so let's talk about the book. The fact that, let's talk about the title and you searching for meaning and what?
So the book really ends up being just a lot of like self-reflection. So it's told as like my life story. And so I do reflect back on relationships and then just even life decisions, like going back to where I decided to go to college and how I decided my major and all of that. But it's really, a lot of the questions I ask myself are very relatable to everything. It's essentially kind of that struggle phase of exactly what we were just talking about. Be who I feel like I'm supposed to be, like for whatever reason, whether it be pressure from family, friends, society, culture, who knows, or just figuring out like who I actually am. And I just realized like how much I had let outside influences kind of direct my life. And And so the book is a lot of that process of realizing that. And then, once I was done writing it, then it was like, okay, now I've got to, do something about it. So the first step was, moving forward with publishing the book. And as I was getting ready to do that, I started to just get really like excited and inspired by it. And then, I'm driving to my corporate job and I don't want to be going there. And then I'm sitting at work and I'm not really mentally there, which is not fair to my employer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did reach a point where I decided to jump ship, and I left the corporate world to kind of go all in on promoting the book and trying to make a career out of writing. And, now I'm in this just really kind of interesting place of realizing I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm new in this game of writing. And so I'm still like, I don't want to make it seem like it's all this fairy tale and wonderful. Like it's difficult, and I'm still very much figuring it out as I go. But I don't know, there's something about that feels better than kind of the just going along with like the corporate flow of things.
Sure. And I just want to share, like, you have a number of amazing reviews. And one of them stood out to me and said, this uniquely written story, more like a conversation with your best friend. And I love that. And we'll have you asking yourself questions, who I am really, taking personal inventory, what have my actions have created, and setting goals to achieve both short and long term. And it goes on and on. But, the fact that it's not just your own reflection, but that you're sharing, hey, guys, reflect on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. And not everyone can do that. And so I love the bravery you show. And I say that because you're right? You've jumped in head first into being a full-time writer. You're being brave enough to admit it's not as easy as you thought it would be.
It's
right?
not.
How long has it been since you made the leap?
Almost a year. Coming up on a year. And, it's kind of like goes back to what we were saying earlier about the further you're in a career, like that's what your resume lends itself to. Like, I have a great resume, but it doesn't lend itself to writing. Like, my resume is full of sales and marketing and public relations and, all these jobs that I had taken and done well at, but wasn't kind of what I want to be pursuing now. So I'm feeling very much that that challenge of trying to really kind of jump onto another track, because it's like I'm fresh out of college, trying to start a new industry, but I'm 35.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a moment, guys. I want you to understand, she is set. Kacie has been set for a corporate track, right? Could have been director, VP. She could have gone all the way, right? That track was what she was on. She literally jumped from the train onto hopefully another train, but she's hanging on to that train from the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You're not on the train. The train tracks have bumps and bruises and ups and downs. And this is why I'm saying she's brave. Because she's facing the fear of the unknown.
Yes.
She doesn't know where this train is going. The other train had a path and a destination. Kacie is going a one-way track that's unclear. She could always jump back onto the other train, but I don't think she'd be happy. Like, we talked earlier about guilt. We talked earlier about happiness, and not all of us will recognize or take the time to reflect upon ourselves and realize that we need to jump the train.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm very proud, impressed, respectful of the decision you made, because I know it's not easy.
Thank you. No, it's not. And that's why I love your mantra for the year of like embracing your fears, because what I realized about, that's a great analogy, the train that I'm like clinging onto for dear life, but by no means inside of it. And it is very unknown, but kind of what I kept telling myself when I decided to do this was like, I'm smart, I'll figure it out. And it's like, for the first time in my life, I haven't had that set plan and that security. But I have this new view of kind of the unknown and the fear associated with it. And really, I don't know why we assume the unknown is going to be bad, but like we do. And so that's where the fear comes from. But for the most part, our fears are all just, they're assumptions. And so if you really think about them, it's like, oh, well, I can't do that because what if, but all those what ifs are just guesses. And There's this writer who I love. I think his name is Pico Iyer. I quote him a lot. I hope I say his name right. And he says like the what ifs point in both directions, but we only ever talk about like the scary direction. So I mean, I definitely still get scared, and I have ups and down days. Like today was a good day. Yesterday was a bad day, and where I question everything, and I feel very nervous and very scared about the unknown. But I don't know, at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, okay, all of my fears aren't necessarily warranted. Like, I don't know how things are going to go, but I do know that like right now in this moment, like I'm okay. So nothing's that bad. Like I've got a roof over my head. I ate today, so I'm good. I'm doing good.
You know, actually what you just said kind of leads towards why we're afraid of the unknown, right? The security, the safety, roof over our head. Will we be able to eat? Those life sustenances, the questions that we kind of freak out about. Like if I do this path, am I going to be what they call the starving artist? Am I going to be homeless? Am I going to not be able to survive? And guys, I can't guarantee you the answer to be no. I wish I could. But I think that you don't give yourself enough credit to think about the fact that there are other ways to figure things out, right? Sell stuff, right? Get a part-time job.
Yep.
There are ways so that you don't have to be struggling and suffering. Kacie, can you talk a little bit about how you were able to make that leap and still not freak out about the fact that these necessities of life, and I'm going to call it the necessities because, you know, having Chick-fil-A isn't the stress. That shouldn't be the stress. That shouldn't be the stress. But like, how do you handle that?
Yeah. So, you know, I kind of remind myself that, you know, aside from crazy circumstances, like you don't become homeless overnight. Like that's a process to get there as well. So I think we kind of all have our own like threshold of comfort in terms of, I guess, how close we get to not being able to like afford necessities. And I think it's not uncommon in a lot of people's success stories that they got super close to that moment, yet they kept going. And so I don't know, I guess I just, maybe it's naive positivity, but I stay positive that like it'll turn around before I get to that point. Like I'm very close to the point of having to get a part-time job. That's something like I start to look for, but it's like I'm not there yet. So I think it's having a realistic awareness of what your circumstances are. And I will say that I am, you know, I don't know if I'd say lucky, but from a financial standpoint, I'm lucky because I don't have a lot of the responsibilities that other people have in terms of like, I don't have children, I don't have a mortgage. My car, thank goodness, is paid for. So I'm just going to drive that sucker until it dies. And really the way that I was able to make this leap is when I started to be like, okay, I'm going to want to do this. Like how I'm going to have to save a bunch of money. How am I going to save a bunch of money? And I knew like my biggest expense was rent at the time. So I'm like, all right, I need to decrease that. So, you know, I looked into getting a roommate at 32 years old. I didn't really want to do that. I was very used to and comfortable living on my own, but I was like, okay, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. And it's kind of funny how it all worked out. Like I'd given notice to my landlord and then the roommate situation fell through. And so I actually ended up moving in with my parents at 30, or wait, no, this was 34. At 34, I lived with my parents, last year. And, you know, that was kind of a little bit of an ego bruise, or it could have been, because that could be seen as very embarrassing. And my parents even struggled with it because they were like, we don't want our friends to think we're, you know, enabling our daughter who's just left her very successful career. I mean, I was making good money, and I quit it, and I left my apartment and I moved in with them, and I just moved out a couple weeks ago. So I lived with them technically for almost a year, even though I guess for the past 6 months I wasn't there. But so I had that. And so a lot of people, okay, well, I don't have to move in, or they wouldn't. You might have somebody, and just start asking. Like I know that, you know, I have friends that have said like, oh, well, you can come and stay with me, you know, if you need to. So I think a lot of times our pride can get in the way of making some of the asks that people would probably be more than happy to do to support you in pursuing whatever your dream is. So, you sometimes have to think a little bit outside of the box or outside of your comfort zone of what your living conditions, what you want your living conditions to be. But I also think that that's not outside the norm of, some of people's success stories of, where they've lived or, what they've survived off eating. So it kind of ultimately, I think, comes down to like, how badly do you want it? Because if you want it badly enough, then you'll sleep on the couches or move in with your parents, the ramen noodles, or whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because it's absolutely true. We allow pride to hold us back from asking for help,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's twofold. One, you got to ask for the help, and the second thing, remember to thank them for helping you.
Oh yeah.
Right? Don't just look at them like, what'd you want? What'd you expect? I mean, they're helping you. But whether it's your parents or friends in their couch, whatever it is, I think we don't give the people in our circles enough credit for it.
Right. We definitely don't. And ironically, like, that's asking for help is something I struggled with for a long time. So that was even really a big moment for me to kind of have that conversation with
Mm-hmm.
my parents. And then I had to continue to have it because when I initially moved in, it was going to be for a short period of time. And then, the book launched and I realized that this was going to be harder than I thought it was going to be financially. And so, you also like wear out your welcome or you don't take advantage of people. So you've got to kind of be aware of those limits and it looks different for everybody. But I guess like overall, I think the biggest point is like, how badly do you want it? Because if you really want it, you'll be willing to, put in the work, get uncomfortable,
Sure.
ask for help. Or you can let those obstacles be excuses not to move forward.
Yeah, and it is tough. And that actually leads to the next topic that I want to kind of touch on, which is mental health. And, I'm a big proponent of mental health and being mindful of it. And I just think, when you're jumping into the unknown, jumping onto a train, holding on for dear life, it's easy for your mental health to spiral and
Mm-hmm.
to lose track of that. What have you done or can you suggest for people to kind of be mindful of, and two, do to help themselves strengthen their resolve and their mental health, especially if they're taking a chance like this?
Yeah, so back when I was writing the book, I took a lot of walks on the beach
Mm-hmm.
and I stopped watching the news like completely. And in the morning instead, I started to listen to just like positive motivational stuff. It started as YouTube videos and then I got into podcasts. So I think being aware of what you're consuming is important. And there's some people like, you don't watch this, how do you know what's going on in the world and all this stuff? And I get it, but also like, you're right that your mental health can kind of start to deteriorate. You've got to do stuff to kind of counterbalance your mind maybe going into those negative spaces. So you need to consume like a little bit more positive information. And so I think you can still get your news, at some point in time during the day, but I'm a big believer that first thing in the morning, like whatever your morning routine is, and it differs for everybody, but have a morning routine that sets your tone for the day and kind of gives you that breather. And I would keep it positive. So probably not checking email first thing when you wake up, not watching the news or checking social media. So I've realized that like working out for me is a must for my mental health. Like, yes, there's the physical health benefits, but for me, I don't know, it's like a therapy, like a little hit of it
Mm-hmm.
thing. So, and I like to do it in the morning. So I work out in the morning. I was really good at getting into like some meditation and then I got out of that and now I've just recently started to try and get back into it. But I'm also a big fan of taking walks outside. I'm lucky that I live close to the beach, so I can go over there and take my shoes off and walk in the sand. But I mean, there's some like legit research on the power of being in nature, but then also if you can be barefoot, like feet to the earth, like that's like a grounding. And so, I mean, some of this people say like it's like a little bit woo-woo, but a lot of the most successful people in the world like meditate and have these little rituals of like getting outside and, away from our screens and just like having quiet time. And it's really hard to do because, the busier you get or the more you have on your to-do list of like, I've got to do, XYZ in order to, feel good about my day, it's hard to put that stuff away and be like, all right, but I also need to like just get up and take a walk because I'm feeling frazzled right now. So it's like you've got to listen to your body and like your mental state and like be aware of that. I am a fan of just like push through. Some people are, but I just know for me it doesn't work, because what will happen is then I will crack and I'll be exhausted, or I'll, just start crying all day. Like I will have some kind of an emotional crack
Sure.
if I don't pay attention and kind of honor the rest periods. And there's a book I read. It's a short, easy little read. It's called Recharge. It's by Heidi Hanna. And she talks about how everything is cyclical. So it's like, we can go, but then like we've got to come down so that we can like recharge to be able to go. So I try and like remind myself of that when I feel like I'm on like high speed for a little too long.
So there were several things that you said that really caught me that I really liked. One, you have to protect yourself, right? I mean, if turning off the news is what you have to do, that's what you have to do. Two, totally agree with you that setting how you handle your morning routine, whether it's meditation, whether it's affirmations, gratitude. I've told you that before. Those are good things. A friend of mine reminded me to do affirmations for myself, to help set the morning. Because if you start off with a positive mindset, a positive attitude, it will set the tone for the day. Hands down, absolutely. Research has shown it. Experience has shown it. But if you wake up and you start looking at the news and you see the negative stuff coming, right? Because it's just going to, if you get hit with that, you get hit with, hey, why do we have to do this? This is due today. We need this, right? That stress is going to start and affect your ability in the mornings, and it's going to set the tone for the day.
Absolutely.
So listen to Kacie. Take at least 5 to 10 minutes. Take some time just to sit and think and be positive. Can't emphasize that one enough that she said. Totally believe it. Totally encourage it. And there's one other and I can't remember it now. But I agree with everything you said.
No, but I love how you said just 5 or 10 minutes, because I think a lot of times people hear like, oh, morning routine, and now you want me to sit like 30 minutes. No, like really start small, and like I guarantee you, like you will start to notice a difference, and then nothing is more motivating than results. Like that's the case for everything. So if you start to notice like, oh wow, like I feel better today. I was less irritated in traffic, or whatever it is. Like I was more in the moment coming home from work, like and playing with my children, or actually sat and had a conversation with my husband instead of just immediately like turning on Netflix. Like you'll start to notice these changes, and then that kind of just furthers those like healthy habits.
Absolutely, guys, hands down. Now, Kacie, I've loved every minute of our conversation, and you have so much to share. What is one thing you would tell these guys to do today to chase their dreams?
So I would say just take the first step. That's it. Like break it down. Do not think far in the future. Like just take that first step, and then that like you're okay. Everything's okay. So then you can probably then take the next step. And so I think a lot of times we attach all these like fears to even just starting the process. Our mind goes way into the future and it's like, but then this is going to happen. No, it's not. Like you're taking step one. So like just start there.
That's awesome. Kacie, thank you so much for joining us today, having this amazing conversation. If these guys want to reach out and connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so my website is kaciemain.com. That's KACIEMAIN, and you can find all my socials there. I have an email list. I do like a weekly email. I just started my own podcast. It's called The Better You Podcast, so you can find that there. But yeah, the website is the best place to find everything about me.
That is awesome. Kacie, thank you again. Guys, you guys can learn more and find all the links that Kacie mentioned over on the show notes page at amyj21.com/episode 205. That's episode 205. Thank you once again to Kacie Main for showing up and sharing her story and journey. And guys, so many nuggets. Definitely listen to her and take some time to just have a positive mindset to start the day. All right. Until next time, keep chasing.